Capitalism just means that life itself is paywalled. Life is paywalled. Do you understand what that means? They have deprived you of all of the resources that you need and then ransomed them back to you for more than they're worth. You already paid for them in the first place, okay? All the private profits that they make were publicly funded. You understand? They have no moral legitimacy, nor do they have any form of legitimacy that you could think of. In every social movement, it is imperative to educate people about the systems of oppression that we are currently living in, which have been tacitly accepted. We don't even see them as oppression. We just accept them as self-evident laws of nature. So yes, I think it's the least that we can do is to talk about this right now. At the very least, we need more people walking around this earth understanding the class war that they are living through in the class-based society that they live in, and they cannot explain those things away. Those things cannot be explained away. Your material conditions cannot be explained away. You either represent yourself or you will be represented. Just because you don't want to think about it because you're not political, because that's for other people, not for you, doesn't mean that those decisions go away. Doesn't mean that you're not affected, okay? Being anti-political is still a political stance. That's what you have to understand, that everything is political. Everything is political. And you can't escape that. Just like you can't escape living in a class-based society. Just like you can't escape what the productive forces are in society and what your relation to those productive forces are. Capitalism is predicated on the principle of exploitation, the principle of infinite accumulation of capital in a world of finite resources. It is the principle of greed, sociopathy, and self-enrichment, and it is heading us towards oblivion right now. Remember that in order for capitalism to exist, there must necessarily be two separate classes. Owners, who get everything that they don't produce, and workers, who produce everything that they do not get. The owners are a minority class. Now it's tenths of a fraction of a percentage of the population are actually considered capitalists. That's because we've progressed so far. The excesses have been so egregious that we now have monopolies that have traversed the entire globe. Remember, you can't explain away your material conditions, okay? The most pivotal question you should be asking is, what do you do for the economy? That's the most essential question about your life. What do you do for a living? And if you are a worker, like the majority of the people that I'm talking to, then you are being exploited by actual capitalists. You can't explain that away. That is your life. Accepting your exploitation is not a self-evident law of nature. That type of thinking never got rid of systems of oppression in the past, in our history. And it is incumbent upon us living now to educate people about the systems of oppression that we are currently living under. In every time, there are systems of oppression which people have tacitly accepted as if they are self-evident laws of nature. But as revolution, as social movements progress, as people literally fight and die for more human rights, that proves that these are not laws of nature. So, for instance, the divine right of kings was once thought of as being a law of nature, okay? So was the monarchy, the king and the queen. So was the feudal system. So was slavery. So is capitalism. So is capitalism. If history teaches us anything, it's that systems are born, they evolve, and they die. And capitalism is dying. Here's a perfect example of someone fabricating a statistic in order to validate their point of view, which is not really based in reality. This person says that over 50% of US households are making $100K or more. It's not true. Let's take a look at Business Insider, which reported as of January this year that millions of Americans earning $100K are living paycheck to paycheck. People think, $100K, oh my God. $100K in 2023 is not the same as $100K in 1990, in 1960. In 2000. When the cost of living goes up, your purchasing power goes down. Real wages are not nominal wages. If you made $100K in 1970, that would be like making $777,000 today. Even more absurd, to prove my point, making $100,000 in 2023 is like making $12,702 in 1970. Also, the claim that 50% of US households make $100,000 or more is not true. It's closer to 34.4%, and more than 8% of all the US population earns $100,000 a year.
The comment should have read something like this: 50% of Americans that do make $100,000 are living paycheck to paycheck. There is no such thing as a capitalist democracy. Capitalism is antithetical to democracy. Capitalism privatizes resources, consolidates wealth and power into the hands of the few, and excludes and inevitably exploits the general public. Capitalism creates a class-based society which organizes itself around the means of production in the form of owners and workers. Owners operate like dictators. CEOs are like kings. They make all the decisions that affect public life, and yet they are not answerable to the public. In an actual democracy, those in power would be answerable to those that are not in power. In other words, those in power would merely be facilitators of public policy, of public interests. And if they were not performing their task, which was a civic duty, then the public would be able to rescind their power, would be recalling them back. There is nothing remotely like that in a corporation. There is no accountability. CEOs, along with the board of directors, can make all the decisions they want, can have all the power that they want, can use resources the way that they wish. Capitalism is more closely tied to fascism.
Capitalism is not survival of the fittest. Capitalism is deprival by the richest. These fuckers look fit to you? Capitalism isn't a law of nature. If that were true, it wouldn't require violence to sustain it. Capitalism doesn't have a disdain for government intervention. Capitalism requires government intervention. Capitalism isn't a free market. Capitalism is a command economy. Capitalism is not commerce. Commerce predates capitalism by more than 10,000 years. Capitalism is not a democracy. If that were the case, why would we need a ruling class? Why would we need a separate class of chief executive owners? Capitalism isn't hard work because capitalists don't work. Capitalism isn't meritocratic, it's parasitic. Capitalism is not meritocratic because the gains are made by literally enslaving people. So what is capitalism? Capitalism is just a way of organizing the economy. It's the private ownership of public resources. The working class creates an economy, not capitalists.
This comment is exactly what I mean when I say that misinformed but well-intentioned working class people cannot make the distinction in their minds between a system of ownership and labor. They cannot understand for the life of them that capitalism is a system of ownership. It is a system that basically decides what to do with the resources and who gets to own them. Labor, as I've said before, is independent of economic systems. There was always jobs, there was always labor in every society and even before society. Capitalism just decides who gets to own that labor, and it doesn't get to be owned by laborers. Capitalism decides that it is owned by a separate owner class that does not work. And that's the funny part about people that criticize socialism, because they associate it with people that are trying to live off the government and not work and take in the money and the value from the hard work created by others. That's exactly what capitalism does. That is exactly what capitalism is. It is a separate hierarchical structure system where you have an ownership class and a laboring class, a working class, and one owns quite literally the other. Capitalism does not create jobs. Capitalism creates profits, and specifically, capitalism creates profits for the private ownership class. So this is completely incorrect. Jobs existed before capitalism and they will exist after, just as labor existed before capitalism and will exist after. Capitalism is just taking from labor its value and giving it to a separate parasite class. It's all about who owns the labor. Is it going to be owned by a separate ownership class of people that don't work? Or is it going to be owned by the people that actually do the work and are affected by the work? The problem is capitalism. No, it's crony capitalism. That is capitalism. It's crony capitalism. Wrong. It is the very system of capitalism which prioritizes profits over people. It privatizes goods, services, and resources out of the public domain. It consolidates wealth and power into the hands of a very small, privileged sector of the population. What? And it creates, reinforces, sustains, and perpetuates the monopolization of all industries. Corruption is not a bug in the system. It is the core feature. No, we just got to get rid of the corruption. Then capitalism can really flourish. It is flourishing. It's working exactly as it was designed. No! This is brain rot propaganda. Capitalist sympathizers always blame structural issues on a few bad actors that need to be weeded out and then everything will be fine. But it never is. You cannot blame systemic failures on individuals. It is the very system which must be abolished. Oh, really? And what grand plan do you propose? What system do you have to replace it, Mr. Big Brain? Simple. We stop giving power to corporations. We stop funding wars. We can make public resources publicly available.
Do you have a site on them?
We can enact laws that raise the standards of living for actual workers. We can give the poor a political party.
Take the shot. Take the shot.
Nixon ordered Cambodian genocide. Clinton sent cruise missiles to Sudan, people died. Obama gave the orders to do drone strikes. Reagan invaded Nicaragua in '85.